Hi, thank you so much for that. So my name's Tarun. I'll be doing our presentation today about PTF and what SphereMC does with PTF, as well as what we've done with North Dakota. And I'd like to, have it be a pretty open session. So if questions start to come up, feel free to put them in chat, or I believe we have the ability to unmute. So um, we can kind of make a little bit of a conversation. We should have plenty of time at the end. Yeah, let's get into it. Let's see. Here's me. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions about what we're doing, feel free to send me an email, and I'll get back to you. If you're more interested in talking about, what SpearMC does as far as like from more of a sales perspective, you can contact my boss, Randy. Here's his email. And so Randy really heads up as far as selling everything PTF related. And so he'll be your go-to person for that. We're just going to open up the chat and keep it in a separate window real quick. Okay, perfect. So a few things about SpearMC. I'm sure you've seen in all of our other presentations, we've got quite a few slides kind of about who we are, right? You know that we're SOC 2 certified, we're Gartner recognized. We kind of do everything PeopleSoft related, kind of expanding into more of the general Oracle space as well. Now that we're doing work with stuff like Oracle guided learning and things like that. We've got all sorts of services, but the one that we're going to be really kind of focusing on today is closer to the managed services side of things, as well as a little bit of our proprietary products, because we'll talk a little bit about the testing grounds. So as far as our managed services go as well, we're going to be specifically focusing on testing as a service, how it was getting it set up for North Dakota, and then a little bit of kind of follow-up with how it's going. Um, One more kind of general SpearMC slide is that, we've got a bunch of trainings coming up. I'll have a slide at the very end of this presentation as well with a full list of our trainings. If you're interested in that, I'll just hang out on this slide for a quick second. Feel free to scan that QR code. You'll get a full list of our training offerings. Okay, so let's get started talking about what is PTF. So just for folks that don't know what PTF is, PTF stands for PeopleSoft Test Framework. It's an automated testing tool that's built by Oracle, and was kind of built for test engineers, a little bit for developers. The idea was that it would be able to run functional testing, and so it has a lot of, very important features that automated testing tools need to have. You can do your recording in multiple browsers. This is a weird slide because you can actually only record in Chrome and Edge, I believe. Test execution, Chrome, Edge, Firefox. Um, for today's session, I'm going to be doing everything in Chrome, but Edge is also a perfectly acceptable solution. You can have multiple test cases for each of your test scenarios, so you can handle different sets of data. You can link things together using shell tests. I don't include this one here, but it has a pretty strong, set of kind of variable related tools where you can create and manipulate variables within your tests and then pass them from one test to another. Um, We've also got, maintenance reports and other kind of test upgrade tools that are delivered. We'll talk a little bit more later about what SpearMC has added on as well, as far as, things with reporting and stuff like that. As delivered, it does a pretty good job of handling everything, especially when you consider that it's technically free. It comes with your PeopleSoft license already, so you already have access to the tool. It just comes down to, do you implement it? How do you implement it? Where do you use it? Let's see. I'm just going to put my thing on. Here we go. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what it actually looks like. So I have a demo recording here. I'm sure folks have seen this in, like, the previous Reconnect. The thing about it is that this recording was done back when you had to use Internet Explorer to record your PTF scripts. So it used to look like this, where if you haven't used PTF for a while, it's going to look very familiar. You had to open the recorder, you click record, and then Internet Explorer would open up. And then you would always have this little test recorder window on top of your browser. And you just walk through the process. The way that I generally do it is that I don't click record until I'm logged in, sometimes not until I'm like almost navigating to the page. Um, and the reason why I had to do that was because when we were using Internet Explorer, you're going to see it moves quite slow. For some reason, it had like an effect on the actual speed of the browser itself. Um, let's take a look at what it looks like nowadays. So let me pull up my environment here. So here's a live environment. We're going to do a live demo, so hang in with me if I run into any issues. Let's go ahead and create a new test. And this is all the same as before, right? The moment where things start to get a little bit different is like once you open up the test recorder, you're going to see that slowly. There we go. Now a different looking PTF recorder window is open. It's not the rectangular kind of more horizontal one now. It's this kind of more vertically oriented one. This new PTF recorder kind of works similarly. So I'm going to click the home button to like open this up. I'm just going to get logged in with demo user. Boom. And you're going to see that there's a little sort of bit of text on the bottom right that says browser hooked. Click on REC to start recording. Okay, so kind of just like in Internet Explorer, I'm going to click record to start recording whenever I'm ready. Now it says PTF is recording, and now you can see that if I click on something, the text on the bottom right over here changes and it tells me what's recorded. What's also nice is that now on the left side or wherever this PTF recorder window is, you're going to see that all of your clicks are now recorded. So it's pretty nice. You can kind of see what has been recorded there. So I'm just going to take a quick shortcut to get to here. With PTF generally, as a best practice, I like to interact with as many fields as possible, just so that later on, when I'm, working with the test, I can more easily, make edits to the test. I don't have to go back in, re-record, or open up the browser and, dive into the inspect. I don't have to do any of that. I just try and touch as many fields as possible, even if they're sort of defaulted. Requisition ID, I'm just going to go ahead, even though this is defaulted to next. Something else I could do is if I really didn't want to change this for some reason, I could always right-click. And now you can see the PTF recorder tools are here. It's not on the recorder menu anymore. Now if we go to the PTF recorder, go to add action, verify, and I can verify that this says next. So it has all kind of the same tools, just in a different UI. I see a question, does PTF work better with pop-up/modal windows now too? It works the same as before, which is we were able to kind of figure out how to get it to work as long as you can use like the PT mod frame properly to figure out which modal window you're on. It works fine. I will say that as it is now, it seems to be pretty stable when I work with modal windows. Um, Going ahead and clicking the add button, now I can just enter in some stuff like Reconnect 24 demo. Cool, cool. I'm just going to pick an item here. I think I can do something like that. There we go. Okay, if I set a quantity, and then I think the UOM, yeah, it's going to be box. Okay, cool. And then I'll click save. And then just like before I said, with the PTF recorder, now you can just right click and then verify. I'm just verifying that this is set to approved. And I'm going to stop recording. Okay. So I'm going to close my recording window. Boom, boom. All right, here we go. So same as always. I'm not going to get too much further into it. From here, like I'm not going to get too much further into the recording side of things. From here, you can try running the test. When you run the test, there are a few different things. So if you haven't used PTF in a while, what you're going to find is, oops, I can put a question mark. Let's do that. What you're going to find is now you have options to run in the background, primarily with Chrome. And so my demo environment is quite slow. So we'll give it a second to save this, but there we go. So if I open up my execution options, I can see here that it's set to Chrome and run in background. So let me pull up one of my tests that I know for sure will work if I run it. Let's click run, and it'll run in background. What does this mean for you? It means that if you really like using screenshots in your test, um, consider why you like using screenshots and whether you can build sort of verification into your test itself. Because if you can, then you have the option to run in background, because when you run in background, you don't get screenshots out of your tests. So something to consider. While this is running, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, what's in our library. So if I open up here, you can see that we have a whole thing here that's actually called our demo library. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. This is part of our testing grounds. Um, and it's sort of based on this demo library that we do a lot of our building, and that's sort of where the PTF accelerators part of the conversation comes in. Let's get into that. So we can see that this is run to success. Great, we've got a green flag. Our test is run to success. Cool. Up and back here, let's talk about our testing grounds, which includes stuff like the gold library, our bolt-on, things like that. PTF is great at doing a lot of things. It's good at providing a generally understandable way to create, maintain, and run tests. And when I say like generally understandable, like it's if you had to get your functional team into the PTF tool, they could pick it up, and it's pretty straightforward. However, you do need to get them into the tool to do that. So there's not a lot of online stuff that's available, especially around reporting and editing, that those functional users may need to kind of access. So we came up with our testing grounds sort of set of tools. I would really call it an ecosystem of tools. It's kind of a bolt-on that includes quite a few different different features. I have these listed here, but it's kind of nicer to look at it like this. So we've got things like a dashboard, so that you should be able to see, how many tests are passing, how many tests are failing, and then you should be able to drill down to see your actual test logs, see error messages, see screenshots, assuming you're running them in the foreground. We've got a operational dashboard, which allows us to kind of organize tests into a test cycle. The idea being that you can then generate a batch script, and if you have your system set up properly, you should be able to schedule that batch script to run. There's something to keep in mind there, which is that when you sequence things into a batch script, it's not the same as a shell test. So for folks that are very used to taking a bunch of tests and putting them together in a shell test to like test a whole module, this is different. The primary difference is that the like variable information is not going to pass between your tests unless you're using persistent variables. Yes, so I see a question. The testing grounds is an add-on that SphereMC provides. Yeah, a bolt-on tool, an add-on. That's correct. I see another question, which is, does PTF have any advantages over tools like Selenium and Playwright? It's a great question. PTF is actually built on Selenium, so you're going to see a lot of similarities between the two. The primary thing that makes PTF kind of an improvement over Selenium is the fact that everything in PTF is saved as like a PeopleSoft object. So moving PTF tests and things like that happens in App Designer. You create app Designer project, you put it into Fire or whatever your version control, your migration software is, and you should be good to go. And it also does a very good job of working with PeopleSoft sort of processes, um, uh, both literally with processes in that you can use PTF to, quickly run a PeopleSoft process, but also like you can run queries in PeopleSoft and then take the output of that query, save it as a variable, and use those variables as input for your tests. And you can do that in like basically one line. It's a data loader step. Jim Marion here also has a great point, which is that you get test coverage, test maintenance reports. All of that stuff is because of the fact that your PTF tests are saved inside of your PeopleSoft database itself. And so it can check what objects have been changed, what objects are covered by your test, and so on. Nice. One more thing on here is the test evidence reporting. There may be a question about like kind of what's the difference between that and like a dashboard. The idea is that the test evidence reporting allows us a way to export our logs as PDFs. Select a certain number of tests to export as a PDF. The idea behind it is primarily around auditing as well as communication. So if you have users that don't want to log into PeopleSoft even, maybe you're using Jira or something like that, you could be using our test evidence report tool to generate PDFs, save them off to your Jira tickets, and kind of save people a little bit of a step. Last but not least, Gold Library. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's basically a library of tests in finance, HCM, and campus solutions. It gives us kind of a starting point, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we use them later. All right. Since Testing Grounds is kind of built as a bolt-on, getting it into your application itself is super simple. Just a matter of kind of migrating it and making sure that all the security is set up properly, and then having a SpearMC resource just verify everything looks right. So I have this video, but I actually like these screenshots a little bit more. So this is kind of what the dashboard would look like. The idea is that each of these rows that appear, these folders, are the folders that are set up in your PTF tool itself, right? So when you click on one of the rows, it should drill down and you see the list of tests that are within that folder. The way that I usually set it up is that I set it up by module. As you can see here, these are all of our general ledger tests. Something to keep in mind is the way that this handles shells versus individual scripts. So if you run a shell, you may expect that your individual scripts have their statuses updated, but that's sort of not really how the PTF logs themselves work. So the dashboard basically works the same way that the PTF logs work. If you run a shell, it tracks the status of the shell itself, whether the shell itself ran to a pass, fatal error, failure, whatever it might be, warning, and so on. So if you want to find out more about what's wrong with a test, you can go into the detailed log, which will pull up the actual steps that have been run and some screenshots as well. So if you ever have some sort of an error, you should be able to pull it up. I see a comment. See, it's a recording. When there's a version upgrade, are the test cases still usable? So PTF is a recording. When there's a version upgrade, are test cases still usable? In the past, we've had a great challenge to run test cases on new PeopleSoft versions. Yeah, there's sort of a process involved with keeping your testing materials up to date. The nice thing about manual testing is that people read documents and we kind of know how to fill in the blanks. Like we know that if something isn't working, that maybe you click on this button or something. PTF may not know that. And depending on the change, it may not matter. If a field is still on the page and has simply changed location, perhaps, has changed its size, but it may still just work. To deal with that, you can run some of the sort of maintenance reports as a first line of defense, right? So you run your maintenance report, you see what objects have changed in whatever patch you're putting on. there's certain rules you can set up with that as well as far as like severity of issues. So like if a field is totally missing on a page, that's a big issue. So that's like a priority one issue and so on. So make sure you take a look at those rules, set them up to what's reasonable, and then run that report. Beyond that, we always try to do like a round of testing in our dev environment, testing as in like verifying that our scripts actually work. And so there is a sort of a level of making sure that you can trust your scripts before you rerun them in multiple environments following that. So you should still be getting, quite a bit of benefit out of your scripts because you're going to be rerunning them in multiple environments. But yeah, totally reasonable to feel like it's challenging. When it comes to doing testing as a service, we handle that stuff for you. So that's how it generally works in North Dakota, is that if there's changes that need to be made for a patch and stuff like that, we just take care of that. Okay. Okay, so let's say you pulled up your error screenshots and then you realize that, okay, I actually messed up with some of the data for a script. I can also update the test data from online. So here I've just pulled up one of our update test data pages. Perhaps in this case, the account is actually old. And so we may need to update our account number here. We update our account, we click save, and then it's ready for rerun. So we don't have a way right now to like run directly from the page, but what we can do is generate batch scripts that can be scheduled to run later. And we do so on our sort of test cycle definition page like this. So here you can see I have a whole set of tests that are related to general ledger again. Perhaps I want to save this as our set of regression tests that we always run related to general ledger. We would generate this sort of a batch script and then schedule those to run later. I see a few more comments in the sort of message in the chat that I just want to address real quick. I see from Hennepin. Wonderful to see him. We find issues more quickly because we run our PTF scripts. I see a note here that Oracle did provide documentation on changes for 8.6x on major changes, mostly related to search. Oh my gosh, the search changes. That was intense. I expect that they would continue. Certain things make test maintenance more difficult. Navigation, major security changes, and that's a big reason why we bypass test navigation for the most part with PTF. Absolutely, wherever possible, try to use your page prompt, which is a type of step in PTF that should bypass all of the navigation clicks and everything and go straight to the page. That works best, of course, with classic pages, but when it comes to using tiles and things like that, you have to build your steps to be quite robust with how they find and click on tiles. A question in chat I see from Wendy, for folks on this call: how many organizations have teams that this is all they do, or do maintenance, creation, etc., on top of their job responsibilities? It kind of sounds like, well, we had an OGL session recently, and we described these people as kind of having a side hustle, I suppose. So for how many people are people on their team kind of doing PTF as a side hustle in addition to their current responsibilities versus, just on their own? Feel free to go ahead and put your sort of experience in chat. Love to hear that. Just continuing with the presentation, there's just one last thing, which is the creating PTF or the PDF evidence reports. Kind of hard because PTF. It's very straightforward. There's a set of filters. You find the test that you decide to output to a PDF, and you generate your PDF. We save that off to whatever SharePoint, Jira, whatever you're using to track and have evidence of testing. And this is really most important with our testing as a service, because we like to make sure that you have proof that we did everything that we said we would, so that if a bug shows up later, you can always go back and be like, did we test this? How did we test this? How did we miss this? What do we need to change? All right, so let's take a look at our example. Right. So let's take a look at state of North Dakota University system. So The general situation was that state of North Dakota University System came to us together as to do a testing as a service project. The idea was that there are kind of 6 pillars of PeopleSoft across both organizations: 2 finance, 2 HCM, 1 ELM, and 1 campus solutions. I think you can guess which one has the campus solutions. Um, there's quite a bit of customization in the environment. I'm not going to say it's the most customized I've seen, and it's definitely not demo, but there was a good amount of stuff that they did that was kind of special to their organization. The idea was that we need to reduce manual testing effort as much as possible while still maintaining test accuracy. And I think that's the really key thing to think about with automated testing, is that it's not just reducing manual effort, but it's improving the quality of your testing as well, right? You want to have repeatable tests in every environment so that you know that if something goes wrong, you know exactly what was done to test that. So right now there was kind of no kind of large-scale automation happening as far as PeopleSoft testing goes. So most of the testing, all the testing really, was done manually, and that takes time, effort, and staff turnover also makes it difficult because then you have to retrain new staff on how to do this process and how to test this process. Um, and there was also kind of limited regression testing because of the amount of effort that it takes, right? So if you want to keep up with updates and PUMs, it's going to be a constant struggle. If you don't have some sort of automation or a really, just some solid testing plan. Um, so our task was basically to figure out how to use PTF to handle this, right? So it was some combination of pre-written scripts, using the bolt-on, and then additional changes to kind of improve the overall testing process. Um, when I say additional changes, that includes things like looking at how generally you test a process. Do you just want to, for example, create a requisition, or should it be more of create a requisition and then approve that requisition? Like, should you build it out into more of shell tests, things like that? Those are the kind of questions that we have to keep in mind as you're building out your automation. Um, yeah, I'll keep going. So some of the goals, things like that, want to kind of identify anomalies, reduce regression testing, efforts, consistently test across environments. Consistency is so key with it, and try and increase the amount of testing that you can do. Reduce manual testing by a certain amount, by some majority, and try and reduce the risk of project failure, which is kind of a hard thing to track is just project failure, but generally feeling more confident that your project is going to succeed because you've done a solid amount of testing. And then is reduction of time, not even just in like people's time, but overall time it takes to run test cycles. And then of course we'll have reporting to show what was tested and the results. So this is how we did it. We start with item 1 there, which is installing the starter kit of guides. All of our starter kit guides actually come with an Excel document for each test. Sorry, guides, tests. Oh yeah, this is actually the end of the session. Let me go through stuff real quick before everyone has to leave. Here we've got project overview, generally the amount of scripts that we built, something around 700 scripts we ended up building, and this took us, really overall for both pillars, it took us, the 8 months or so, almost about 8 months or so to get all of the pillars done completely. I've got kind of breakdowns for everything here. I'll put this PowerPoint onto my meeting or whatever this is. So hopefully you should be able to review this if you'd like later, just so you can see general numbers. But let's talk about results. Identifying anomalies, that's the huge one. We want to try and do that while maintaining accuracy. Consistently testing, done. Increase testing capacity, done. Reduce manual testing as much as possible, done. Reduce risk of project failures, done. Reduce time and resources required to move updates to production, done. And reporting, done. So a few additional things we got was that POM updates, we were able to kind of remain between 2 to 3 images of current. Most of our customizations are included in our automated testing as well, not just delivered stuff. And then we're seeing big reductions in overall length of testing time. For campus solutions, at some point, we're down to 2 days to run our test cycles. Alrighty, whew, there we go. 1 minute over, but there's my contact information. Please let me know if you have any questions. There's lots of great information that was in the chat from folks at IC King County, CCSF, Hennepin. Thank you so much for sort of